In the trenches of World War I, cold did not announce itself dramatically. It arrived quietly, soaked into wool, crept through boots, and settled into the bones. Soldiers piled on blankets and still shivered. Many learned the hard way that more weight did not equal more warmth. The armies that adapted fastest discovered something counterintuitive. Warmth was not lost from the top down, but from the ground up and from moisture trapped close to the body. Out of this realization came a simple underlayer system that proved more effective than any number of blankets. It was not thick, impressive, or comfortable by modern standards, but it consistently kept soldiers warmer in conditions that defeated conventional bedding. Blankets worked well in dry barracks and stable camps. Trenches were neither. Mud wicked moisture upward, condensation formed beneath sleepers, and body heat compressed blanket fibres until insulation collapsed. Even dry blankets lost effectiveness when pressed flat against cold ground. Soldiers wrapped tightly and still woke cold because the ground absorbed heat faster than blankets could trap it. Medical officers noted that hypothermia and trench foot often occurred despite heavy covering, exposing a fundamental flaw in relying on top insulation alone. The World War I underlayer addressed heat loss at its source. Instead of piling warmth on top, soldiers insulated themselves from below. This underlayer sat between the body and the ground, interrupting conductive heat loss. It created a dead airspace that remained warm regardless of surface conditions. Once this barrier was in place, even minimal top covering became effective. Soldiers reported sleeping warmer with fewer blankets once the underlayer was properly arranged. The underlayer varied by front and availability, but its function remained consistent. Straw-filled mattress rolls, folded greatcoats, bundled uniforms, wooden duckboards topped with sacking, and even layers of dry brush were used. The key was loft and separation. The material needed to trap air and resist compression. Straw and dried grass performed exceptionally well because they maintained structure under weight. Cloth alone failed unless folded thickly and kept dry. Moisture destroyed insulation. Wet straw lost loft, and damp cloth conducted heat. Successful underlayers were kept as dry as possible and replaced or refreshed frequently. Soldiers learned to elevate bedding during the day, allowing airflow to remove dampness. Some units rotated straw regularly, understanding that insulation was only as good as its dryness. This practice dramatically reduced cold-related injuries. The process followed a predictable order. First, the ground was levelled and drained as best as possible. Duckboards or wooden slats were laid down if available. On top of this went a thick layer of straw, grass or bundled cloth at least several inches deep. This layer was fluffed, not packed. A ground sheet or shelter half sometimes covered the underlayer to protect it from moisture. Only then did soldiers lie down, with blankets used sparingly on top. The result was warmth from below and retained heat above. Frozen ground conducts heat rapidly. The underlayer broke direct contact. Air trapped within straw or brush acted as insulation, similar to modern foam pads. Unlike blankets, which compressed under body weight, the underlayer maintained thickness. Soldiers reported that once body heat warmed the airspace beneath them, the cold ground no longer mattered. Sleep improved. Energy loss decreased. recovery time shortened. Cold stress. It really drains calories and weakens the immune response. By preventing heat loss overnight, soldiers were able to conserve energy. Medical records show lower rates of cold-related illness in units that consistently used ground insulation. Dry, insulated sleepers were less prone to trench foot and respiratory infections. The underlayer did not just improve comfort, it actually improved survivability. Early in the war, the doctrine mostly focused on clothing and blankets, while ground insulation was, often overlooked. Only after repeated failure did informal solutions spread, more through experience than official orders. By the later years of the war, manuals began emphasizing ground insulation, but, supply shortages meant soldiers still had to rely on improvisation. Knowledge passed peer to peer, not top-down. These days, modern outdoor enthusiasts, they often repeat the same mistake, investing in heavy sleeping bags while neglecting ground insulation. The lesson from the First World War underlayer is pretty clear, honestly. A simple insulating base can outperform piling on extra layers up top. Today, this principle shows up in foam pads, natural materials in survival situations, or even just layered bedding in cold shelters. The rule, it really hasn't changed at all. Insulate from below first. As warfare moved indoors and, mechanized heating became common, ground-based insulation just sort of faded into the background. Still, the environments that defeated soldiers a century ago, they haven't gone anywhere. Cold, wet ground remains, to this day, one of the fastest ways to lose heat. The First World War underlayer solved that problem with minimal resources and, honestly, maximum effect. It worked because it respected physics rather than fighting it. Heat loss through conduction was addressed head-on. Moisture was managed deliberately, and weight and thickness were used with a bit of cleverness. This wasn't some luxury fix, it was a survival adaptation, born out of sheer necessity and pressure. If this deep look into World War I fieldcraft sharpened your understanding of practical history and survival principles, support in the beginning by subscribing, sharing this episode, and helping ensure that hard-earned knowledge from the past continues to inform the present.